This is a GK Media podcast.
This podcast is part of the GK Media Studios Creators Network, helping people tell their stories. Become a storyteller today and learn about our podcaster network at gkmediastudios.com.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode with Niall Leyden and myself, Garry Kelly. Niall is from Atlantic Wealth Management and I am the founder of GK Media and host of Garry Talks. And every Friday we focus on various elements that we think are important for people who are in business, but for people generally in life: health, wealth, business and family. And Niall, I was at an event that you were giving a talk at before, and a lot of what you spoke about really resonated with me. You were talking about, what separates champions from contenders. You were saying it's not talent, it's mindset. There's another important aspect that you had spoken about was saying, it's not luck, it's discipline.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
I feel a little bit hypocritical talking about discipline, insofar as I wasn't always as disciplined as what I've been for the last 12 or 18 months. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Is it okay to say that? And discipline would have been a big word in our house growing up, and it's a word that nobody really likes. Discipline.
We're usually associated with a slipper.
Well, in my day,
or a wooden spoon.
Yeah, correct. I'm thinking of the brothers, St. John's, where I was in school, and Summerhill, wonderful schools, but discipline, whether it was in sport or on the pitch or in the classroom, it's just not a word that sits very well with us.
Yeah.
Schmocht being the Irish word for discipline, obviously living and working in Galway and being part of that whole community. And I'm familiar with the conference that I presented at, where we talked a lot around Damian Brown.
Mm.
So let's just talk about Damian Brown, which I'm sure the vast majority of our listeners would be very familiar with. Damian is a good, long-standing personal friend. He's somebody that I first saw speak at a big leader summit in the Argelon, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 years ago. Professional rugby player, hails from Galway, known globally as being just having an iron mind.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. I mean, his mindset, his discipline, his focus is relentless. I've listened to his podcast, but I think back to, welcoming him back into Galway after spending 112 days at sea. Like, let's just let that sit for a second.
On your own.
On your own. I mean, I struggled.
This isn't a Caribbean cruise or anything.
Well, I struggle at home even an hour on my own, or 2 hours on my own. I'm very much a people's person, but 112 days at sea, on your own, 40, 50-foot waves, that isolation, sores in all parts of your body that,
and with a family at home as well.
With a fabulous, wonderful, brilliant family at home. And to do what he did and how he did it, and I know, getting washed in there in Furbo, only over the road from where we live. I mean, having climbed and summited all the 7 summits and Everest and going across deserts. I mean, the reason I share that story with clients is, when we're talking to new clients around, the journey we're going on for decades, it's so important in the world of investing to have that discipline and have that iron mindset and play the long game and be the hare. Be the tortoise, not the hare. So discipline for me, whether it's in health or wealth or business or life, it's so important. And that accountability.
Yeah. You need accountability with.
Well, it goes hand in glove, really, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If you look at all the books and the TED Talks and people in our business, they talk around, talking about wealth and freedom and what works and what doesn't. And what do people really want? Well, they want a good lifestyle. They obviously want good health, but they want a good lifestyle. But that takes discipline. So delayed gratification is a conversation we're having with a lot of clients, because a lot of what we do is intangible. You're putting money away for a future date, and it's saving or spending. It's, do I save it or do I invest it? And what's it all for? So discipline, it's probably a word. I'd love to find out. Have you any ideas in terms of how we could reframe the word discipline and mindset?
Well, I think you need to accept that sometimes in business and in life, it is a roller coaster. It's not always going to be smooth sailing. It's not always going to be constantly ascending up the mountain. And the backbone to keeping sane when there's a bit of a dip is having the discipline to just think long-term, think
Yeah.
of where you want to go, believe in yourself, allow yourself to have that down day, that bad day, that no energy. I feel flat
Yeah.
today, but having that discipline to remain consistent, because with consistency, that's where traction is gained. And that's where you get closer and closer, chipping away bit by bit,
Yeah.
step by step to achieving your goals.
Consistency. I mean, and I was guilty of not doing this for a long, long time, but never self-sabotage. You know, don't let one day become 2 bad days in work or in business. And we all have bad days.
Yeah.
You know, it's not all about the 5 o'clock starts. They're all about the victories. I mean, there's days you just don't feel like doing it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I have a meeting in Dublin, I have a meeting in Cork, I'm up in Donegal, I need to go to the UK. And, you know, you're not always going to have that level of energy. You know, life happens.
Yeah.
Curveballs, the swings, the roundabouts, the ups and the downs, the ebbs and the flows. And I always go back to that whole lighthouse analogy. I mean, there's always hope there in our world where there are so many. We go back to the 75, 25, 15, and we've had a lot of this year with Trump and tariffs and markets and volatility and noise. It's just to remind people, this too shall pass.
100%. That's what I was thinking. Yeah. Every time you're in a rut, it's hard to think about it when you're in it, but like, this will pass, because everything moves on. Everything passes. It doesn't stay that way forever.
Correct. And it's so true. I mean, think back to the year 2000. I'm actually going to, you know, do you remember where you were in 2000 or even, 2000? I mean, the millennium, it seems to me like only a couple of years ago, but like that's Gary, 25 years ago. You know, and we're in the second half of our lives now. So I think of a 2-week holiday that we're going on, thankfully, this summer with my sister and our kids, and we're just going on a family holiday to Portugal. And for me, the anticipation of the holiday is the best part. You know, you're plotting, you're planning, it's the water parks, it's the kids, it's the packing the bags and getting to the airport and having a jar and having the fun. You're into the holiday, and all of a sudden, you know, the first few days you're de-acclimatizing. Will I look at my email? Will I check in with the office? Who's looking for me? What haven't I done? What should I do? And then you kind of get into the second week and you're finding your stride, and all of a sudden you're home. You're like, what?
You got the blues then.
What happened there?
Yeah.
What happened there? So, I mean, going back to discipline and mindset and, you know, just small things being big things, and, you know, being grateful, be where your feet are. You know, I shared just a little analogy there recently on LinkedIn. It felt like the right thing to do. It was a Sunday, and I just said, you know, it goes back to what we grew up with. It just echoes in my head and my ears. It was always, no matter how good things, you know, it was Dad saying to me or to us as a family saying, you won't always have the good days. There'll come a time when you have to bury a loved one, or there's come a time when the markets take a wobble. You got to be prepared for when it's not so good. So be where your feet are. And I think that's a really good one.
Yeah.
You think back to 9/11. I mean, I know exactly where I was. We were in Westport. I was a permanent TSB at the time, and there was 40 of us, and like saying, you know, what has just happened there? It was catastrophic. You know, it was just, I mean, but in bringing it back to what we're talking about here today, you know, time moves on, and the older you get, the quicker, you know, time speeds up.
Yeah.
And life is not a dress rehearsal.
No.
Dress rehearsal. And precious time is slipping away. And I'm meeting a couple tomorrow where for the last couple of years they've been talking about if and but and when. And I'm saying, change your mindset. You know, do it now, because financially they can afford to do it now. But they have this guilt about, you know, doing stuff for themselves. These are people that have built a phenomenal business domestically and internationally, but feel guilty about taking time out. You know, they're wondering, have they enough, which they have. And, you know, we'll have that conversation tomorrow. But, you know, it's just having the discipline sometimes to say no, and having the mindset, you know, that positive, abundant mindset to say, you know, everything is going to be okay.
And I think if you have clear goals, you know, whether it's losing weight or reaching a certain turnover or expanding the business or bringing out a new product, whatever it is, but if you have a clear goal of where you want to be going, I think that then helps as well with the discipline.
Of course it does.
You know?
Of course it does. That's a decision I've had to make in recent months, you know, in terms of Atlantic Wellth and the business. You know, it was a very established business that we're working with for a good number of years. And, you know, the lady in question just said, Niall, think very clearly about what does good look like for you and your business over the next kind of 3, 5, 10 years. Because for me, I go back to the day I got married. There's no I and we. It's all about you. It's all about you and your story and where you're going and what good looks like for you and what keeps you awake at night. And, it's that mindset. And I think, look, we're not psychologists. There's some wonderful James Clear in terms of habits and goals and systems and standards. Schmocked. We all have influencers. For me, it's my parents. That for me is my passion. That's my purpose, and everything kind of flows from that. But certainly discipline. It's when you don't want to do it, and it's that 1%. So 1%, I always say, even to Mark, he has aspirations of maybe playing someday, hopefully for Connacht. He said it to me coming back from the sea last night. He got Player of the Year first year in St Enda's this year, and he said, "Look at that, it's no big deal." I said, "Mark, well done you. Dreaming someday it'll be the right one. What do you want to work on over the summer?" He says, "I'd love to meet a couple of the coaches and just maybe my tackling and this and that." But like, to hear that from a 14-year-old, and Michelle, she likes presenting and all of that. So just that discipline to do it when you don't want, because as I said to Mark yesterday, if you're 1% better every day, that's 37% in a year. It's like doing the 10,000 steps. I want to check your tracker there. You're doing your 10,000 steps a day.
Yeah.
That's how many marathons in a year.
Yeah.
So there you have it, mindset and discipline, Gary.
Yeah, so I think that's key then to today's talk. Know clearly where you want to go. So set clear goals for yourself. Bring in accountability if you can. And then discipline is about doing it even on the days you don't want to do it. So focus on what are the goals you want to achieve. Bring in some accountability and bring in discipline so you can achieve your goals.
And I'll leave you with one last thought, just as you were talking there. If you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time. So write it down.
Yeah.
Write it down. I have the Atomic Habits Journal. I do it every morning, but if you have them little health goals, business goals, financial goals, write them down. Manifest, visualize, and watch what happens.
Super. Love it.
There you go.
Excellent. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you liked it, if you found it of interest or help, please do get in touch and let us know. Send us on your feedback, and please do share it with whoever you know loves listening to podcasts like this. Thanks again for listening, and we'll be back with another episode next Friday.